Welcome back. Top 5 at 5:55. Top 5 head coaches who had Liz Truss like tenures. For those of you who are not aware of the news on Liz Truss, she was the Prime Minister of England for 6 weeks. 6 very tumultuous weeks before she was ousted by even members of her own party, which makes back-to-back people in Britain who did that. But I thought, let's apply that same kind of tumult to college football coaches. And Smokey, I think people would be surprised at how many people have really short runs as college football coaches.
Yeah, there has been. So I was really kind of thinking about this, and last night came up with a couple of names, and I don't want to ruin the top 5 because you and I think the same so much.
Yeah. Yeah. Number 5, Nick Rolovich from Wazoo.
Yeah.
He had 11 games. 11 games between the 4 games in 2020 and then 7 games into 2021. His was pretty simple, and not getting into this argument, but was let go because he didn't want to follow the state policy from Washington of not getting vaccinated for COVID-19. So he is gone.
I would have been let go of 365 Sports. You know how we are about this.
Yeah.
We both think about this differently. A lot of new information's out, whether or not it was the right thing to do. But did he get any payoff?
Yeah, I mean, like he's suing for some more, but yeah, he's getting it. But they did have, I mean, they did fire him from cause because he was, defying a state order. So those are things you get fired for cause. So chat room, enjoy that one and fight amongst yourselves. Number 4, Wille Taggart at Florida State was 22 games. 22 games, a year and a half. Wille Taggart, I'm trying to put this diplomatically. He did not do anything dumb. I think like people think like, oh, he made this bad decision. The only thing he did wrong that affected everything was he made an assumption that the team was still loaded with talent, and their problem was just they were mad at Jimbo Fisher. That was wrong. And
Could both be right?
Oh yeah, I mean, but that was the only. No, it was wrong because they didn't have the dudes anymore. They did not have the dudes, especially along the offensive line, and just misdiagnosed every problem along the way. And then the other problem was somebody told him that James Blackman was good and he was maybe the worst Division I quarterback in the history of football. And he had to ride with him for a couple years, for 22 games until it all came crashing down. So Wille Taggart, also a very short tenure, to the point of where Florida State's still going to be paying a huge buyout for a couple more years because nobody was going to the games. And now they've got 4 sellouts this year. So that worked, at least in that.
I think you're talking about him longer than he was there.
Yeah, probably.
But you have great insight being a Knowles fan.
Yeah. Number 3, and this is where we start to get into the really embarrassing
very
category.
Quickly.
Mike Price lasted 4.5 months, and he went to a Pro-Am golf event in Florida. In Panama City, I believe, or Pensacola. I can't remember which one. But the two aren't that different. And had a $1,000 room service bill charged to a woman who no one knew, and then spent hundreds of dollars at a strip club with that woman, and was no longer the coach at Alabama, paving the way for the much reviled Mike Shula era, which then paved the way for the greatest run of anything in the history of college football.
But Mike Price should then get credit.
Because if he had never made that horrible decision, Nick Saban might have stayed at LSU.
Absolutely.
Or with the Dolphins.
Or he might be with the Buccaneers right now.
Yeah, you don't know the butterfly effect of what happened if Mike Price doesn't make this horrible decision. They should build a statue of Mike Price throwing dollar bills.
You're being sarcastic. I'm being honest. Without Mike Price screwing up, maybe he was there just good enough, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe so. So maybe you shouldn't be mad about it. Number 2, and this one is really bad, Mike Haywood. Do you remember this guy, Michael Haywood?
I do. Yeah. 16 days.
16 days he was the coach at Pitt. He came from Notre Dame. Within that 2 weeks and change, was found to have committed domestic abuse, had a charge, and then was promptly fired.
That's going to happen. Yeah.
So Michael Haywood,
16 days. So there's one even quicker than 16 days.
Yes, and you know this one, Smokey. Know it well. Baylor fans know it well because this one affected them. Number one, George O'Leary, Notre Dame for
Absolutely,
3 days.
Yeah.
He lied on his resume. Notre Dame found out about it and then couldn't withstand the storm of it and had to let him go. George O'Leary subsequently wound up at the University of Central Florida and demolished Baylor in the Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah, that's back when Blake Bortles and what looked like that Baylor was playing against a team that was bigger, better, faster, stronger. Obviously, we also know much more focused on the task at hand that week.
Yeah, but George O'Leary, 3 days. So even Liz Truss is like, bro, you can do better.
Yeah.
I tanked the economy in my first week.
I remember the Mike
At least
Price
didn't lie on the resume.
Did Mike Price go to UTEP after that?
Yeah. He came from Washington State. Washington State has a lot to do with this. The Pacific Northwest really gets rated or screwed in some of these a lot of the time. But yeah, he came from Washington State, then wound up at UTEP for a little while, but was never. I guess he coached spring at Alabama. He coached the spring, and then after that, they brought in Mike Shula.
All right, so that's a great way to wrap it up on the shortest tenures of a head football coach at any of the schools around the country. If somebody then